Live, local, late breaking. This is WDSU News at noon.
I'm a classic example of what's good about America. Opportunities exist for people who want to reach out and grab them.
And his entire life, that's what many would say Edwin Washington Edwards did. Reached out for opportunities and grabbed them. Charismatic, criminal, unapologetically Cajun. Those are just some of the words many use to describe someone who was arguably the most polarizing political figure in Louisiana history. Our state's only four-term governor passed away this morning at 93, just a month before his 94th birthday. The larger-than-life man charmed his way with so many voters and captivated people with his storied escapades, dominating politics and eventually a stint in prison. WDSU's Travis Malkel joins us in studio this afternoon with more on Governor Edwards' flamboyant life and legacy. Travis.
Well, Christina, Edwin Edwards' criminal past will be written as a major part of his story, and it should be, but some argue that it could be a footnote on the legacy of the quick-witted Cajun who was a champion for the poor and for civil rights. Edwin Washington Edwards was arguably the most polarizing political figure in Louisiana history. The four-term governor was plagued by corruption allegations throughout his career. He evaded any convictions until the early 2000s, when he was found guilty of racketeering charges and sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. WDSU was there the day Edwards was found guilty. The day he went to prison,
facing a very large, long prison term.
And the day he was released in January 2011.
I have been tried more times by the United States government than anybody else in the history of our country.
But it easily could have never happened. Born in Marksville in Avoyelles Parish, the son of a sharecropper, Edwards set out to be a preacher and even preached at his hometown church, Church of the Nazarene. Edwards briefly attended LSU, joined the U.S. Navy, and served at the end of World War II. He later returned to LSU to earn his law degree. Edwards' political career began in 1954 when he was elected to the Crowley City Council. In 1964, he was elected to the state Senate and served for 1 year before winning a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. In 1971, Edwards won the Democratic primary for governor, beating J. Bennett Johnston in a runoff. Edwards then defeated Republican David Treen in the general election. From 1972 until 1980, the charismatic and witty Edwards served 2 terms as Louisiana governor.
Laissez les bon temps rouler, let the good times roll.
A highlight for Edwards, a man who prided himself on keeping the budget balanced, was replacing the state's outdated 1921 Constitution and putting an updated one in front of voters. It passed in 1974 and went into effect the very next year. Edwards was elected to a 3rd term as governor in 1983, defeating Republican incumbent David Treen with 62% of the vote. Edwards was the first person ever elected 3 times as the state's governor. Then he won his final term, 4th one, in 1991.
I have just taken the oath of office as governor of Louisiana for the 4th time. I have not words sufficient to express the gratitude which I feel for this privilege and for this opportunity.
During his time in office, Edwards faced federal indictments for mail fraud, obstruction of justice, and public bribery. He stood trial on charges twice, in 1985 and 86, but was never convicted.
How wonderful it is as the truth finally comes out and we see what has really been happening behind closed doors.
It wasn't until after Edwards left office that he was no longer able to evade prison time. Edwards, along with his son Stephen and 4 others, were indicted on numerous bribery and extortion charges stemming from a riverboat casino licensing scheme. Edwards was found guilty on 17 charges, sentenced to 10 years in federal prison, and fined more than $200,000. Edwards never wavered from his claim of innocence. Edwards reported to prison in October 2002 and was released to a halfway house after serving 8 years. Shortly after his release, the 83-year-old Edwards married his prison pen pal, 34-year-old Trina Grimes Scott, his 3rd wife.
I do think, as Edwin does, that things will be completely different the second time around.
In October 2013, a reality show starring the governor and his new bride premiered. Met with a big build-up, then little interest. The short-lived The Governor's Wife ended its run after just 8 episodes. It focused on the post-prison life of Edwards, his new wife gelling with his grown children, and Trina Edwards' pregnancy. Eli Edwards was born August 2013. The following year, Edwards announced his return to politics, going after a congressional seat with a stated desire focus on health care improvement.
I'm old enough to know and young enough to go, and they're going to see some action from Edwin Edwards when he gets to Congress in January.
But Edwards' political charm had run out. Republican Garrett Graves, who still holds the seat, blew out Edwards, winning by more than 25%. After the congressional defeat in 2014, Edwards vowed that he would still live an active life. A coffee table book loaded with pictures of people from Bill Clinton to Elvis Presley was one of his projects announced. In early 2015, Edwards announced his desire to get back into real estate.
There's a great deal of development going on between Lake Charles and Slidell along I-10 and I-12.
During the last interview with WDSU, Edwards reflected on his life and his legacy.
Of course, I think about my mortality, and I think any reasonable human being thinks about that. And let me say this, I think about my mortality, and for that and many other reasons, I try to do it right. I try to live right. And I don't think on the way to heaven or hell, whichever way I go, I'm going to meet anybody who can look me in the face and say, I mistreated them, or I was unfair, or I lied about them. I always tried to help people, even people who had done me bad.
And in his final days, Edwards reflected heavily on his life. Among his last words, "I have lived a good life, had better breaks than most, had some bad breaks too, but that's all part of it. I tried to help as many people as I could and hope I did that, and I hope if I did, that they will help others too. I love Louisiana, and I always will." Funeral arrangements are pending according to the family, but will include lying in state in the rotunda at the state capitol in Baton Rouge for a public visitation. That day, though, Christina, has not been announced at this time.
All right, Travers, thank you. You know, we're seeing so many people who are sending their condolences from across the state, even around the country, for the Edwards family. In fact, if you take a look here, you can see what Governor John Bel Edwards said. He in the past joked, stating that his predecessor was his cousin, right, because of the same last name. So Governor Edwards in part said this: "Few people have made such an indelible mark on our state as Governor Edwin Edwards, and he was a fervent supporter of civil rights and ensured that his administration was as diverse as Louisiana. A commitment I have also made as governor. Our state has lost a giant, and we will miss him dearly." Those are words coming from current Governor John Bel Edwards. We want to show you some pictures now of Governor Edwards through the years. Take a look. Here he is with former President Jimmy Carter. This was in 1976. And if you look here, you can see Governor Edwards taking this picture in 1991 with then gubernatorial opponent and former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard David Duke before an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press. And then here is the former governor behind the bar, serving up a couple of adult beverages for journalists at an event for the New Orleans Press Club. We have much more on the life and the legacy of former Governor Edwin Edwards right now on our WDSU mobile app. And stay with us, because coming up in our next half hour, I talked to one of our beloved colleagues, Heath Allen, about his time covering former Governor Edwin Edwards and what Heath believes his legacy will be. That's all new coming up today at 12:30.